And we'll talk today about law firms and their challenge for 2025. And just to spoil it a little bit, about half of firms, only half, have sort of started to elevate Gen AI strategy to the C-suite level or leadership level. So I know that a lot of people out there in our industry will be looking for guidance, like the guidance that your team has created. So maybe we can jump in generally and talk about the challenge around upskilling, the challenges ahead in the jobs market, the opportunities, and helpfully the World Economic Forum recently created a really detailed report about what it sees as the future of the jobs market. So would you be open to walking us through, Bridget, a couple of the key findings?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to talk about this report, but in some ways I don't think it's surprising, and probably won't be surprising for most of our listeners. In fact, maybe they've already heard about it or seen it in their social media feeds. But the World Economic Forum report drew on the perspectives of over 1,000 leading global employers that represent more than 14 million workers across 55 economies, I believe, and 22 industry clusters. So a very large group of employers contributed to the findings and the trends. And the trends are what you might think if you've been following the news or reading anything in the last couple of years. The rapid advancements in AI and technology in general are transforming industries at a pace that nobody really saw coming. And it's creating both lots of new jobs and displacing others. Interestingly, they forecast more jobs being created than displaced, which doesn't mean there aren't significant change management issues for those of us who want to make sure that we can upskill or reskill or co-skill our awesome staffs. There is a lot of work ahead, but I think it makes it more exciting, and it underscores something that I think you say a lot in presentations, that the only bad thing to do right now is nothing. If you're a leader of an organization, because this change, it's a cacophony at this point, and you can't ignore it. And so the only mistake you can make is to just think you can keep ignoring it. And I think that this report, just because of its breadth and its depth, makes that really clear. I will say that our friends on the AI podcast, Paul Reitzer made a really good point, which was that the people responding to this survey instrument, or however they gathered the information, it's probably the case that many of them don't even fully understand how quickly things are changing. They're probably not super users of the technology or super followers of the leaders in the space. They're not trying to interpret Sam Altman's 3 a.m. tweets like we all, like I am. And so if anything, the responses might be not serious enough or not appreciating enough how quickly things are changing. So with that in mind, some of it I think is not surprising. The report predicts an increase of 78 million jobs globally by 2030. So that's a pretty short timeline, with 170 million new roles created and 92 displaced. So that, again, to me, seems like good news. I know scary news with all the change management, but good news overall. There is a lot of work to do, and there's going to be some education needed to get people ready for those new jobs. The roles that companies are going to need are AI specialists, machine learning specialists, data specialists, engineers, and business intelligence analysts. So these might not be traditional jobs that many people have trained for, but they're trainable jobs. And the kinds of jobs that are probably going to go away are clerical roles in all different kinds of industries, including legal. In this particular report, they called legal officers as one of the jobs that was on the chopping block. I'm not sure what that means, but it sounds like judges. Or maybe lawyers. I don't know. Lawyers are officers of the court. True. And judges are kind of I don't know. It sounds like legal jobs are potentially impacted. And I think that's, of course, right. they're clearly going to be impacted. But I think like the rest of the industries, there will be more work created. There's going to be plenty of work to do. It's the getting from here to there, which is what we've been talking about, I feel like, for many months now, and we're going to have to keep talking about. But I think everybody else should be talking about it at this point as well. One of the other interesting things about the report, which is something I love listening to you present on, is the kinds of skills that are going to matter for the future. You know, if you're thinking about what your workers' core skills need to be by 2030, because you want to figure out how to upskill or reskill or co-skill, what are the skills that you want to be training people to do? What are the human skills that are going to matter in the coming years? And again, I don't think this is happening tomorrow. I mean, it took, I've said this before, it took, I think, people 10 years to get on the elevator after it was built. But, the elevator makers didn't go away in those 10 years. They hung in there. They're doing okay now. So
they did. Yeah. And it looks like our tech friends are going to hang
They're going to hang in there.
They seem like they're committed to this.
I think they're going to stick with it.
I think so.
Yeah. So what are the human skills that people should be thinking about?
Yeah. And you mentioned how long the lag time can be in a technology emerging and, broad adoption of that technology. But in the report, it says that just under 40% of workers' core skills are expected to change by 2030. So we're at 2025 now. I mean, that's nearing half of the skills that workers bring to the table in the next 5 years. It seems like such an enormous change. And like you, I'm really excited about all the opportunities it creates, particularly to do things that are much more interesting and creative than things that we've done in the past. But I also think that it requires real leadership at the educational level, at the organizational level. And I think it's too easy right now to put your head in the sand and still be maybe not skeptical, like maybe deep down you believe it, but just not sure what to do or not interested in doing it. And so I'm also going to echo Paul Reitzer, who for the first time, I think in the last podcast episode, said that he recognizes how hard it is to change jobs. But if you're working in an organization that has no AI strategy, like you should really consider moving to a company that does. And I think for the second part of our conversation today for law firms, one of the biggest things on the horizon, I think, is how a bifurcated landscape where some firms are addressing AI and actively talking about it versus the other half right now that aren't. If I'm somebody graduating from law school, I can see all around me what the future is. I'm not going to be interested in going to a firm that has no AI strategy in place. So in addition to the AI strategy and all the tech skills that will be required in understanding data and privacy and cloud computing and all of those things, I think the really exciting thing, and the thing I know we both share an affinity for, are humans and the skills that they bring to the table. So the report really highlights that these skills will continue to be important: analytical thinking and innovation, complex problem solving, creativity, originality, and initiative, and active learning and learning strategies, which I also love. I just think metacognition and understanding how to become a lifelong learner are things we're relatively late to as a profession in terms of our skills, not necessarily in terms of understanding the law, which we're constantly following, but our business models, our skills, and the way that we sort of bring ourselves to the engagement. And the social emotional skills that will be even more important are leadership and social influence. And we'll talk a little bit about this, about what we see in leadership in law firms and legal organizations. I love resilience and stress tolerance and flexibility. And I'll again cite the Larry Richard research about lawyers' low sociability and resilience and tolerance for change and how much of a challenge that will be, and emotional intelligence. So, I think the exciting news is that those attributes become even more important if we can leverage skills that allow us to understand how technology augments. And I know you talk about this all the time, how it augments and does not replace human beings.
Yeah. It's going to be an interesting period, I think, especially for people who I think there are actually a lot of lawyers who had these skills or have them and have them sort of maybe didn't get to build that muscle as much during law school or even after. And it should be exciting for, I know a lot of these people. I know them in law firms. I know, they're my friends. And I think this is their moment, man. It's going to be a fun transition. I promise.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And all those innovators who have felt sort of constrained, shut down, asked to move toward the exit because there were, to be fair to firms and other organizations, there really was not an imperative to be innovative, and innovation could have been a risk to your firm. And I think we're entering an era where it's a risk not to be innovative. And I think that's very cool. Thank you for tuning in to 2030 Vision, AI and the Future of Law. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our podcast and leave a review. Stay informed and inspired as we continue to explore the AI-driven future of the legal profession. We'll see you next time.